All right, everybody, welcome to BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. Drive safe. Dave here along with Double Check Dale. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing very well, and yourself. Drive safe.
Pretty scary.
You're pretty scary?
Yeah, there's a dip in the road.
Yeah, well, I heard the comment that, never mind. There's supposed to be a second word with that? Yeah.
Negative, Ghost Rider. That is not what these signs mean. These signs are to indicate that there is a change in the terrain ahead. That the road surface has changed. You could say bump, it could say narrow curve, it could say any number of things, but it could say loose gravel, but one of the terrain changes can be dip, and dips can create havoc to a big truck. They can make it unsafe to drive, they can damage the equipment, they can also cause the load to unsettle and or alter in some way, right? Shift is like we call it in the freight business. It can shift a load if hit it at too great a speed.
Absolutely. Great shirt. I appreciate you taking the time to explain all the different things that it can
Let
mean.
me know you the difficulty I've had all day in the office wearing this shirt. So, like, it is, you know, I'm just saying I do it to remind everybody of the safety involved, and you do this, and guess what?
You got broad shoulders, Dave. You knew you could take it.
Guess
when you
what?
put
I
that
have
shirt
been
on.
named all day. And anyway, it has been done. So a couple things. Number one,
Yeah, weather's ugly and getting uglier this
yeah,
week,
it's you know, they got hit out west this weekend. Donner Pass out west and the northwest,
Yeah.
they got hit pretty heavy across the mountainous regions and coming across, and now it's moving its way into the plain states, upper plains, and Midwest.
Yep, you know, it's the nice thing is, I shouldn't say the nice thing is, it's probably going to hit mostly the northern states where it isn't real populous and a lot of traffic there. Looks like 80 in western Nebraska will probably catch part of it. Hopefully it'll stay pretty much to the north of Denver.
Well, I'm just going to break news to you. 80 is a major thoroughfare.
Well, I understand that.
I mean, a major thoroughfare for truck traffic going west into California. However, you might not want to be in Donner Pass right now.
No. 48 inches this weekend. Yeah, that's a good snowfall.
I mean, I'm sure they got most of it cleared.
Yeah. If the winds pick back up, probably not.
I don't know. If you've ever gone down that hill with snow on it and chained up, I'm telling you, it is not the way you want to go.
No. And I looked this morning, the chain laws were in effect in Donner Pass. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Been there, done that. Not
have them on. Not just have them with you. Have them on.
I'll tell you what, that sucks. And I don't. But anyway, I digress. It is going to be difficult across the region. The weather's going to continue to get bad. And let me tell you, not only do we have snow, there is a deep plunge in the temperature that's going to also follow this storm.
Yep.
I mean, and that means below freezing temperatures are going to last a week in some of these places.
Yep.
I mean, you're talking, I did see some relief on Thursday in Denver for maybe 48 degrees or so. I mean, 43 degrees, and then brought back down to freezing all the way through next week.
Yeah. It's going to be cold. It's December. It's getting close to where
It's
winter's
January.
actually starting, you know, so we're still in fall or autumn technically, but
We are still in fall until I think it's the 21st
I
or the
believe.
22nd of December is the winter solstice.
yep. But temperatures are reminding us, you know, it's going to get cold, it's going to stay cold. And you know, and that's okay. It's that time of year, Dave. Just got to be prepared for it. That's a big thing.
You know, and everybody sits here and talks about it, but I'm telling you, they're out west. They need that deep snow. They need about another, I would say they need probably another 25 feet this year out west.
Yep. Southern California is still catching some rain, and there's a lot of flooding going on down there. It's drenched there. We're going to see some rain and some potential for some severe storms tonight in the Texas, Oklahoma area, and tomorrow that shifts over into Louisiana, Alabama, Arkansas could see some, and some tornadoes could outbreak. And so just have to keep an eye on that. Be aware of your weather wherever you're at.
But they do anticipate some blizzard type conditions right up there in Nebraska.
Yeah, Nebraska, western Nebraska, into South Dakota, and North Dakota, and then it shifts into Minnesota. We'll see that.
Just right where you might expect it.
Yeah, I mean, and they're prepared. They have the equipment to move a little snow up there.
They do. They do have plans in effect in order to react accordingly. But as we always like to say, it's good to know what's coming.
Yep.
And winter is coming along the way. And just remind everybody that as we mentioned it, and if you're out that way and you're running that way, or if you've got trucks running out there, remember that's going to be highly affected are these overpasses and underpasses. These will tend to hold on to the precipitation And if it gets in the teens, I don't care if you put salt on it or not,
Yep.
it's going to be frozen. I just,
Yep.
it's still frozen.
Yeah.
You do what?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Dave. It's under 32 degrees, 17 still frozen. Yep, it's still frozen. But
Well, I mean, normally when you put salt on the ground,
Yeah.
it helps to,
lowers the
but when
temperature.
you're down there in the teens and the lower teens and you're hitting those single digits, that salt's not helping you.
no. Nope, doesn't help a bit.
I still have frozen. And let me just tell you, you're going to encounter those conditions. Make sure that you're genuinely prepared out there in those weather moments, and be advised that when you go out there and you're in a truck and you're driving across these overpasses and you're going under these underpasses, the individuals that you're running alongside or running with aren't usually prepared.
No.
They hit the brakes at the wrong time. They just don't react well to conditions that they're not used to. Now, a lot of people up there are used to winter driving, are used to it, but they still are average at best when it comes to experience out there on the road. Only, I would say, the big truck drivers, the experienced people, the professionals out there are going to try to do it right and best every time. But don't drive fast in these adverse. You're also expecting some high winds, aren't they?
Yeah, and winds are going to play, well, goes with the blizzards. And so, yeah, winds are going to be for the next 2 or 3 days. Even in the Central Plains, we're going to see a lot of winds going across Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. Hey, and Wyoming, Dave.
Hey, I also wanted to say I'm gonna make sure that we play real quick a Wreaths Across America deal, because something was announced out on December 7th. We didn't get a chance to state that last week, but Wreaths Across America Day recognizes it for December 17th. Go ahead and play. Do you have the wreath? Look at that. This is a picture from last year in Wreaths Across America. You can see up there at the end of the mall, you can see it going in, what's going across there in our nation's capital. Look how awesome this is. Will you go ahead and play that Wreaths Across America segment intro?
The biggest fear Goldstaff families have that their child will be forgotten.
Because everyone has a story. There's a story behind every name that you see here.
It's important to teach not just kids, but everybody.
We need to never forget freedom wasn't free.
Their sacrifice is not just our past, it's our future.
Join the mission to remember, honor, and teach. Visit wreathsacrossamerica.org.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now Congress has actually recognized a Wreaths Across America Day on December 17th. So they'll be laying out wreaths on fallen soldiers across the country at cemeteries around this nation, demonstrating not only our appreciation, our respect, and our love for those that gave the ultimate sacrifice and gave it all, so that each of us could have what we have today. And we do have a future here in this country.
I'll also play that again right before our interview.
Do what?
I'll play that again before our interview. Also.
Okay, we'll play it one more time. We do have a segment we want to replay. We think it's important. We're going to go ahead and play that right now with Kenny Ray.
Oh, always a good interview.
Always a fan favorite. So we're going to play that really quick. We're trying to get some safety information out here as we move forward. Go ahead, roll it.
The biggest fear Goldstaff families have that their child will be forgotten.
Because everyone has a story. There's a story behind every name that you see here.
It's important to teach not just kids, but everybody.
We need to never forget freedom wasn't free.
Their sacrifice is not just our past, it's our future.
Join the mission to remember, honor, and teach. Visit wreathsacrossamerica.org.
up that to 16 different types of crashes that they'll now look at. A motor carrier can submit a request for a review through the data queue system in the FMCSA portal, and FMCSA will look at the crash, and they will either issue a ruling that this crash was preventable, it was non-preventable, or they will say it doesn't meet the criteria for the program. Now, to date, still looking at the number that they've looked at, the success rate for motor carriers is still over 94%, which means 94 of every 100 that are submitted for review are found to actually be non-preventable. That is, in the motor carrier's favor. Now, if they get ruled in the favor of the motor carrier, several good things happen for the trucking industry. Number one, the crash is not used in the calculation of your crash basic in the CSA. It will not be used by an auditor when they come in to calculate your accident frequency. And something important for a driver is it will show up on the driver's PSP, the pre-employment review program, as being a non-preventable crash. Now, the crash doesn't go away. There's a myth about that. It still remains on there because DOT says the reason we collect this data is to just collect data. We want to know how many crashes there are out there. The problem was how the data was being used once it was posted to the public site. So now what we get is a stamp basically on the motor carrier's website that the federal government says this was a non-preventable crash, and very beneficial for our industry.
You know, and really, I think most of the carriers in that 94% presented them when they were non-preventable, right? I mean, if they were genuinely at fault, they're not going to submit a challenge, is what we like to call it, a challenge on the ruling if we were at fault or had been ticketed for it. But if it truly was an accident that's non-preventable, that's when the carrier needs some relief, and that's when they went for it, and I think that's the reason for the success rate. Don't you agree, Kenny?
Absolutely. And in fact, Dave, you hit a tremendous point. I do a lot of teaching. Y'all both know this. I do a lot of teaching across the country, and this is one of the subjects I teach on. And I always admonish as sternly as I possibly can for a motor carrier not to submit a crash if there is the least indication that they were at fault, that it was a preventable crash, if the trooper shows any kind of remarks in contributing factors of the driver. Because know this, if the crash that a motor carrier submits to the program fits the criteria of the program, it's one of those 16 types, you do everything right, FMCSA is going to issue a ruling. Now, we want that ruling to be non-preventable, but they will issue preventable. So think about that. If 94% of them have been ruled as non-preventable, that means 6% of them have been actually ruled by the federal government as being preventable. They post that on their website. So heaven forbid why a trucking company would want the federal government to publicly put on a website, yeah, you had a crash, and yes, it was preventable. It basically takes away any defense you would ever have in any sort of litigation. So it is much better not to submit one to the program than to submit one that you absolutely know ahead of time you're going to lose.
Hey, Kenny, that is great information there. So can you tell us a little bit what types are challengeable, which ones we go after?
Yeah, and Dale, the easiest thing for any of your listeners, for motor carriers, drivers, to do, for y'all to do, is to go to the FMCSA Crash Preventability. They have their own website. You can just get on Google, whatever search engine you use, and type in FMCSA Crash Preventability Determination Program, and it'll bring you to the website. And this is one time where the federal government, the educational material that they developed is very, very good. Whoever did it did a really good job. And they have a guide of how to submit the challenge, that used the term Dave used. It tells how to actually go in and submit the data queue. And then they have a guide to the 16 different types of crashes. And one thing neat, they put a little diagram of each one of them, the different types. For instance, if y'all had a truck sitting at a red light or a stop sign doing absolutely nothing wrong, the driver is simply sitting there waiting for the light to turn green, or it's his turn to go at the stop sign, and a four-wheeler runs into the back of the trailer. And there was nothing the driver could do. He had nowhere to go. He couldn't stop the other car. He couldn't do anything. There's a diagram within this material that they developed that shows those type of crashes. And there's a diagram for all 16 of them. I mean, they range everything from striking an animal on the highway to certain kinds of debris in the road. If you're driving down an interstate highway and a car comes off of an entrance ramp or runs into the side of the trailer, they're all listed. All 16 of the kind are listed. Now, I want to tell y'all, while we're talking about these 16 types, FMCSA is absolutely dogmatic to the point of zero variability of deviating from these 16 types. It has to fit absolutely perfectly. This, in my opinion, is still the one weakness of the program, is because there are some crashes out there that, number one, they're not the fault of the motor carrier. They also are non-preventable, but because they don't exactly fit one of those 16 types, FMCSA simply rejects the challenge and says this crash is not considered for preventability because it doesn't meet the guidelines. We're hoping, now think about this, in the pilot program they looked at 8 types, we're now up to 16. We hope that as the federal government, gets more and more comfortable with how they're issuing these rulings and how they're making these determinations, we're hoping that they will add additional categories, because there's some more that need to be added that right now simply aren't. So the easiest thing to do, short of just going down that, and I can go down the list for you, but there's some other things I'd rather share with you, but it's easiest just to get on the website and look at the 16 types. They even give you examples of crashes that fit that type and crashes that don't. They have a column with a green check in it, and they have a column with a red X in it. And so it tells you, don't submit these kind. We're not even going to look at them. These are the kind we will submit. But it's the classic things you think of. A truck sitting at a red light getting run into the back, a truck having the right of way through an intersection and a car slamming into it at the side. Those sorts of things that everybody would readily identify as being, non-preventable crashes. The problem is in the details, because a trooper, what you'll always need to do is look at the crash report and read what the narrative says, look at the diagram in the crash report, always look at the segment that shows contributing factors, make sure they didn't put any contributing factor on your driver. And it's just a very, very careful analysis of the crash report that you have versus that document. And I want to tell y'all, that document is really important, even to the point, and y'all know I'm sitting on the side of the road in my car. I'm out working today, but I'm just going to show you, I just keep a copy of it with me all the time. It's about a 10-page document, and it's got, all the diagrams of the pictures. And this document is so handy that I keep it with me all the time in case a client calls and says, hey, we're thinking about challenging this crash. Does it fit the program? And I'll look in there and see. So the FMCSA did a really good job designing the educational material that goes along with this program.
Did you, and as you deal and as you educate, and I know a lot of people are putting in, but I'll tell you, I think, Kenny, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot don't really know that you can challenge, right? I mean, you meet and talk to individuals in the trucking industry that aren't aware of this when you first meet first make their acquaintance, correct?
Absolutely, Dave. And that's one of the reasons I was so proud when you and Rick and BCB kicked this program off in its infancy, BCB Live. And when you have Bob and Dale on there, I just, because there's a lot of people other than your employees, your drivers, your customers that listen to this program. And so I always, every time y'all ask me to be a part of it, and I'm grateful y'all have asked me several times, to be your guest. I always use that as a platform to educate people. This is never about Kenny Ray. It's always about the topic that we're talking about. And you're right. I cover all of Texas and all of Oklahoma for my company, and I come across companies all the time, good motor carriers, that don't even realize this program exists. And it's been highly publicized. It's in all of the trade journals. And again, I go back to my opening statement. This is one of the things the federal government did that is very, very good for our industry. And the fact that 94% of the properly submitted challenges are being found to be non-preventable in the favor of the motor carrier, it's a travesty that we're not using this tool more, because it really will help a company, and it helps a company in very practical ways. On that CSA score, on their crash basic, on crashes being eliminated from consideration during an audit, and for their drivers having the notation placed on their PSP that this was a non-preventable crash. So it's really, really important that more motor carriers utilize this program, but it's equally important to know that they only need to submit the ones that they know absolutely will not be ruled against them. Those are the ones that, you know, when the program first came out, I heard some very arrogant people in this industry say, well, I'm going to challenge every single one of them. That's a terrible idea. Because if your driver was at fault, if there were things your driver could have done to prevent this crash, and I hope we'll take, and I know you've got time constraints, I hope y'all will let me explain the difference between at fault and preventability, but if a company knows that the crash was preventable, they don't need to submit, because this actually will hurt you. I mean, you don't want the federal government ruling that you were involved in a crash that you could have prevented. That's a kiss of death on your insurance premiums, and it's a kiss of death on any litigation in case you're sued.
Yeah, you can. We preach and we talk about preventability and fault and at fault. And go ahead, Kenny. Just go ahead and talk us through it so that everybody understands about how. Because we also talk about how important it is about preventability and about at fault. Because we believe the mindset of the driver should always want to prevent an accident whenever possible. It doesn't matter if you have the right of way. You want to prevent the accident and do everything that you can to prevent. I don't care if you have right of way. I want you to do everything you can to not, if you got to yield right of way to stop an accident, that's what you should do. And I think you should explain right now in insurance terms preventability versus at fault.
Yeah, and Dave, you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, you did as good an explanation as I could. And we're all around truck drivers all the time, and most people know, because I've been on your program enough, but if they don't, I'm the son of a truck driver, and I've got two little brothers that are driving as we speak. Even though I'm a retired state trooper, I'm as pro this industry. I eat, live, and breathe trucking. I love it with all my heart. But y'all know, every single time that we have a driver involved in a crash, the very first words out of that driver's mouth almost always are, "It wasn't my fault." And we need to understand this program we're talking about today has nothing to do with fault. It has to do with preventability. And fault is a legal term. That's something the law enforcement's looking to decide who caused this accident that I can take enforcement action again. I can write a ticket against. Preventability is a much higher standard. Preventability, in fact, the National Safety Council defines preventability, and they say this. They say it's a collision. A preventable crash is a collision in which a driver failed to do everything reasonable to prevent that crash. Now, I often ask trucking companies when I go in and do an audit or teach for their drivers, I'll say, is there a way we can eliminate all truck crashes? The answer to that is actually yes, we can. We can park every one of these trucks on a yard and not move any freight, and we will have no truck crashes. We'll have no truck crashes. But that's not a reasonable move, okay? So a reasonable move, I'll give you a classic example, and I'll make this really, really quick because I know we're coming up on our time, but y'all picture the Texas Panhandle where you can just see forever. and you've got a truck on a 4-lane U.S. highway, not an interstate because interstates have controlled access and exit, but a 4-lane U.S. highway where you have state and county roads intersecting the highway. You got a driver that's on a truck driver on that 4-lane highway, and off to his right, he sees a county or a state FM road that's going to intersect that, and he sees a 4-wheeler blasting down that road, okay? Now, that truck driver, because he or she is experienced out here every day, can gauge speeds on cars just as well as the highway patrol can. And that driver says, you know what? That car is going to get to that intersection at exactly the same time I'm going to get to that intersection. I have the right of way. He's got a stop sign. So if the truck driver did nothing but just kept on going, proper speed, his hours of service is good, equipment's in good shape, and that idiot runs that stop sign and goes under that truck and dies, everyone would agree the truck driver wasn't at fault. The truck driver had the right of way. But was that crash preventable? Most people would say yes. The driver could have backed off the cruise control. He could have tapped the brakes. It wouldn't have taken much change in his speed that guy may still have run that stop sign, but he run it right in front of the truck and goes across and ends up in a cotton field in the panhandle. But so the difference between fault and preventability is enormous. And what this program judges or makes a determination of, was the crash preventable? So they always look at factors way beyond fault as to whether or not the driver could have done anything reasonable to keep the crash from happening.
You know, and I think I like the fact that I get that they make that determination. However, also, Kenny, I think it's important to know that we all have that responsibility. Every single one of us behind the wheel needs to understand that if we want to make a difference not only in this industry, but we want to make a difference between how all those people die on the roads, we've got to understand we have an opportunity to be better at being better at preventability than we are at fault, because fault can be easily, I mean, that's not really where it matters, right?
No, it's about being preventable. It's about doing everything reasonable to prevent that accident.
And I think that's important. But that's not what this program does or says. This program is to measure preventability on any accident with a challenge in place. I think one of my favorites, Kenny, is this one. Rare or unusual type of crash when the CMV was involved in a crash set type that seldom occurs and is not eligible in any of the other types. That kind of.
Dave, you and Dale both know truck drivers encounter some weird stuff out on the road. I mean, there's even been occasions where a vehicle, and not always an 18-wheeler, but sometimes a vehicle be going down the highway, and something like a skydiver, a guy with a parachute that got blown off course, lands in the highway or hits the car, or, you know, I mean, just bizarre, weird things happening. So FMCSA put that category in there for any kind of odd, strange, weird stuff like that. But, you know, and I know we're to the end. I want to wrap up on an encouraging note. Even though the standard for this program is preventability, which is a higher standard than fault, we all agree with that.
Agreed.
Just know that still 94% of these crashes that are being submitted to this program, when they're properly submitted, are being ruled in favor of the trucking company. This is good news for our industry. None of us want to see crashes. I wish I could wave a magic wand and make them all go away. But the fact is, when they occur and they are non-preventable on the motor carrier's part, we now have a mechanism in place to get a little bit of relief from some of that scrutiny that our industry is under because of these crashes.
Do you anticipate, Kenny, and I'm going to ask, do you anticipate that the number will increase from 16 to a greater number? Because I know some of the instances like side swiping on the side of in a lane, that's not allowable under the ruling. But do you anticipate that this will encompass more and be a greater scope in the near future?
I do, and I hope that occurs. FMCSA is getting a lot of pressure from industry to add to these categories. They've been pretty resistant to this point. They're still using COVID as an excuse, saying, you know, our people are still working from home, we're overloaded, we can't take on anything else right now. They can't hire enough qualified people to actually do the reviews. But at some point, I think because based on the success of this program, at some point they're going to have to open it up, because there's some crashes, Dave, that you just said occur that they absolutely clearly were non-preventable on behalf of the motor carriers, and we can't even submit them for review because they don't meet one of those very rigid 16 categories. So my hope is that happens. So far they've been resistant of doing that.
And by the way, I'm just going to ask real quick, where do the determinations are displayed on any and all? Because this is all public information, correct, Kenny? When a crash is deemed non-preventable, it's public information, correct?
Yeah, and where you access that through the SAFER system, there now will be where it shows up the crashes. There now will simply be a notation there that it was ruled non-preventable by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety. And I've actually already seen some of the PSPs the drivers get. So when y'all are hiring drivers and, you know, it shows that driver had a crash in the past, I've seen now the notations on the PSP where not only did the motor carrier receive the favorable ruling, but the driver that was in that truck, it still shows up on his PSP, but there's now a notation. And again, I can't tell you how important that's a stamp of approval, if you will, from the federal government that, hey, this driver he did nothing that contributed to this crash. So it's both on the posting, the public posting for the motor carrier, and the PSP for the driver.
Thank you very much, Kenny. Hey, and as always, I appreciate you coming on and talking a little bit. The next time that we invite you on, I want you to come in studio. I'd love to see you here in studio.
I'll do it. Dave and Dale, y'all are two of my favorite folks. Tell Bob hello. Tell Rick I said hello. And Miss Bryce for putting it all together. Thank y'all for having me.
All right, thanks a lot, Kenny.
Thank you, Kenny.
You're watching BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. BCB Live covers freight. Here we are now at 21% of record freight being rejected. News
down in Texas. We're going to talk a little bit about this. We had another $1.5 million seizure. If ever there's a time to do a pre or post trip, it's if you're doing something wrong.
Weather, traffic.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to some traffic and weather with Buckle Up Bob. You can kind of see where the visibility can be compromised a little bit. Again, right where that rain is.
And most importantly, safety.
One of the things that we must do is make sure that safety is the number one thing that we focus on.
Going into an intersection yellow is not the way. That's to clear an intersection, not to enter an intersection.
Tune in weekdays from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. You can watch BCB Live through LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. So what are you waiting for? Subscribe today and follow BCB Live.
All right, welcome back here to BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. We are back live in studio with Drive Safe Dave and Double Check Dale, and we're going to talk a little bit about safety right here, right now. We're going to pause. We're going to step back. We're going to take a moment, and we're going to go over the new safety topic for the week. And the new safety topic for the week is, and it is appropriate, is
weather driving safety.
Weather driving safety. Is that even how that driving weather?
Driving safely in weather.
There you go. I like that. I didn't know what the other
adverse weather conditions. And we're going to talk a little bit about rain today. According to the FMCSA, you know, it's advisable to reduce your speed by 30% in rain. A lot of drivers will back it off 5 miles an hour, but that's really not enough when the rain is coming down. Wet pavement and rain are two of the top contributors in weather-related accidents. And so it just makes sense that, you know, slowing down is going to give us more precious time to react to something going on, and also gives us better stopping distance.
And I'm just going to go out there on a limb, and I'm going to throw this out to you. I would say of all of the adverse weather conditions, of all of them that we list and that we have, I'm going to go that rain is the most common.
It is, probably because it happens all year long somewhere in the United States.
Yeah, and at some point, you're going to drive on a wet surface.
Yep.
And it can cause danger.
Yep.
Wet can be slippery.
Yep, because of the grease and the oils and the dust that's on the roadway when it first starts to rain, it gets real greasy and slick, and then after it's been raining for a while, you know, it starts ponding or pooling, and so the risk of hydroplaning goes up there. Also, with the spray off other people's vehicles, you know, it decreases the visibility. A lot of
I'm just gonna go out on a limb here. So and here's my analogy. Imagine if you watch basketball players all day play on a court, all day.
Dry court.
Dry court. Imagine what that would look like if you sprayed it all, if you misted it, like if you put misters up and just misted that court. How their rubber sneakers would.
Yeah, not gonna grip so much.
That's kind of what it's like out there on the road if you want to be technical when it comes to water out there, and you're.
You know, I can always count on you for a great analogy. Drive safe. I like that.
Yeah. So you got, and you know what? You should reduce your speed, because at an adverse weather condition, you should slow down.
Yep.
Remember that the speed limit is based upon the maximum speed in optimal driving conditions. Optimal driving conditions does not include rain.
No, it does not.
And that doesn't mean you can go, if it says 60, you shouldn't be going 60 when it's raining.
That is correct.
In fact, you can get a ticket.
Yep. Driving too fast for conditions.
That is correct. So understand that knowing the rules of the road and understanding that adverse weather conditions are there and they are something that you're going to encounter, you shouldn't be afraid of them. However, you should treat them with respect and caution.
Amen.
I like that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And guess what? We will see y'all tomorrow at the same bat time, same bat channel on here on BCB Live.
The safest station in the nation.
See y'all tomorrow.